Extra, tell all about it. It's Dave's Big Dictionary. Dave's Big Dictionary. There it is. It's 75,000 definitions in this handy Merriam-Webster's Pocket Dictionary. And so, well, it's like a pocket dictionary. It's just you have to have a really large pocket for this. What we do is my wife will, or I will, early in the program, randomly thumb through the dictionary. And then, almost like people do if they're planning a vacation and they've got untold time and wealth and just put their finger on the globe and go there, this is what we do. She puts her finger somewhere in the dictionary randomly, points to a word, and then I've got to think about and come up with something to talk about. Let's mellow out, because we have such a nice, mellow word for Dave's Big Dictionary, and it's nocturne, which is a work of art dealing with the night. And what it made me think of, well, a couple of things. I'm not going to go into nocturnal emissions. I'm not going there. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And, I like Chopin, and I know that's my mother's favorite composer. There's nothing she likes more than a Chopin nocturne, but I don't really have anything to say about that or talk about that. I got most of my musical taste from my father and his rock and roll records and his very eclectic taste, which ranged from classical to pop to even some rock and roll back in the day. And my mom's record collection was much, much smaller. She had some doo-wop records, she had some Yiddish Hasidic records, of all things, and then a little bit of classical music, and that classical was Chopin by Starlight. Loved that album. Which was, how shall I put this, not just piano, but piano with schmaltzy orchestration. It's really, really nice. And some nocturnes on there, too. I because there's so many technical problems here with Facebook, I forgot to put up my mic for the radio show. So I've been oh, it's getting good here on Dave's Gone By. It always goes a little pear-shaped after the fourth hour. So what do I want to talk about? Well, in terms of nocturne, maybe nocturnal. And a happy memory. So a happy anecdote, because when I was a kid, and I'm thinking in terms of maybe 5 years old up through really probably about 10, 11, my dad worked a night shift at the courts. He worked, he wasn't a lawyer, but he worked in the court system in New York. And eventually was in the appellate department of the opinion room and all that sort of thing. But I remember, I think he was at Cleary Gottlieb, or Cleary Gottlieb, Hamilton and Stein, if you're keeping score, and he would work the evening shift. So a lot of times I really wouldn't get to see, I didn't have that big father-son thing where we always spent the whole weekends together, because he would work, at some points he was working two jobs, or he had the one job, and then he'd work at home on a steno machine, because he knew steno, which is this weird thing where you press one key and it's a whole word. And he was really good at it, which, through his example, is one of the reasons I became a typist when I was in my very early teens. This is before everybody now goes a million miles a minute with their thumbs on media. This is back when people laughed at me. It's like, well, you're on a typewriter? What are you doing? And then computers came out, and there I was on keyboards, and everybody else is still hunting and pecking. So I credit my dad with setting an example for that. So, but that was the deal. My dad would leave the house, I guess, at about 3 or 4 in the afternoon, maybe a little earlier, drive in to the city, go work at the law firm, and then he would come home, drive home at about 11 or 12 at night. And he loved that. I mean, he didn't necessarily love having these weird off hours that he worked, but he knew that when he would drive home at 11, there was no traffic. Night driving, if you can see, especially, I mean, he was in his 30s at the time, you just cruise, man. Even back from New York, heading towards first Brooklyn. This was before Long Island. This is when we lived in Brooklyn. actually. So he would just get on in like 20 minutes, half an hour. He'd be home. Very rarely would there be a jerk on the road that he'd have to honk at or chase or scream at. Mostly, it was just this very, he liked night driving. And he didn't mind working in the evening too, because it was kind of his own thing. It was quiet. He dealt with people, especially when he first came in the late afternoon. But then he just got his work done. Nobody bugged him. And he came home and he did his job and he was pretty well paid for it. But of course, it cost him in a certain level of being able to be a father there for me as a growing kid. So it wasn't like we all had breakfast in the morning together, typical father knows best thing, because Dad slept. He would get home in the early morning hours. It was probably actually later than that. I probably worked until 11 or so, maybe midnight, and then wouldn't get home until 1 or 2. But what would happen, and the reason I bring up Nocturne, this kind of quiet, nice, peaceful time, was when I would see Dad, and some of my favorite times growing up, is when I would get up early, right? And by early, I mean 4 or 4:30, 5 in the morning, right? Before school, I just get up. Kids don't want to sleep that much. We don't. And so Dad would be home, and he'd have had a snack or something, and he'd just be hanging out, listening to music, or mostly watching TV. And then we would get on the couch and watch TV together. And it would be the late show. As Leonard Cohen said it in his song. And whatever would be on, there were only 3 channels back then, and 2 of them had Indian heads on and just noise, and we'll see you at 6:30 in the morning with Sunrise Semester. So we hang, and we talk a little bit, and watch TV together, and sit on the couch, and that was our wonderful quality time. Time that we didn't have on weekends, because Dad was usually quite exhausted, and you get home late Friday night, finally go to sleep after I went to school, and then he'd sleep in half of Saturdays and Sundays because he had, the other job that he was doing, and for a period of time he was also in the Air Force Reserves, so he also disappear for some weekends and have to deal with that in Wright-Patterson or wherever. So this was golden times for us. And yeah, there were weekends when Dad would take me for cheesecake at Junior's restaurant, or he'd make pancakes for the family. But a lot of times he was either asleep or just wanted to be sleeping and was really grumpy. And just you didn't really want to cross him or be near him because he was in a mood. But he generally was never in that mood when I would get up in the early morning and he would still be up from coming home late from his late shift. And that was our nocturne together, that time, that nocturnal time from 4 o'clock until 5:36 in the morning, when he was getting ready for bed and I was getting ready for school and Mom was getting up. And those remain special times for me. And it's really interesting and coincidental that this comes up, and Joyce picked this word, nocturne, for Dave's Big Dictionary. It just struck me. This week, I was watching an episode of Bob's Burgers, very good show, and one of the things that my favorite parts of that show, aside from that it's just very funny, is something that happens with father and daughter all the time, is they have that father and daughter time. That's their thing. They sit and they watch terrible, campy, zany movies together. And there's that one where they see the actor who was in that old monster movie from before. And then there was another one I was watching just this week where they're watching a movie together as they usually do, but now the brother wants to muscle in on their turf, and the girl doesn't like it at all because this is her dad time. And it just made me remember the dad time. And, I'm glad to be able to get to talk about it on Dave's Gone By today in our Dave's Big Dictionary segment. And by the way, in case you are wondering, my dad is still, thank God, alive. He's not in the most wonderful medical shape, but he's still with us. I keep talking about him in the past tense, but it's only because I'm talking through memory about these nocturnal times that we had.